Good afternoon and welcome to today's installment of our lunch series. Today we're going to be talking about equine health, biosecurity for you and your horse. And I am Amanda Mathenia. I am the UT Extension Agent in Perry County. So we will go ahead and get started. And as we go through the presentation, if you will hold your questions for the end, or you can type them into the chat box, and I'll try to look at them throughout the presentation. So some of the topics we're going to talk about today are challenges faced by horse owners, how you can prevent certain things from happening on your farm, biosecurity on your farm, whenever you travel off of the farm, if you have visitors that come onto your farm, and then anytime you acquire new animals or, every now and again we do have to deal with sick animals. So first of all, we'll just talk about what biosecurity is. So it's defined as management practices and procedures that can reduce the risk of infection disease outbreaks on your farm. It can involve, certain aspects of animal health, vehicle, human traffic patterns, being able to control manure, pasture rotations, and also water and soil quality. I took this picture a few years ago whenever we had our National Ag Agents Association meeting out in Utah, and they had a very biosecure herd. Our tour bus, whenever we whenever we drove onto their farm or their ranch, they did disinfect the wheels of the tour bus. There was only one way in, one way out. But they were had a very biosecure kind of ranch. So some challenges that horse owners do face. So many equine operations, they rely on the public visiting their facility. So the way that they rely on the public is they either board horses, they're on their property. They may give riding lessons. They may give, rodeo training lessons, horse show lessons, or they may hold trail rides. And they can't either limit or restrict public access because they do these. This picture was taken at a trail ride that I go to every year. It benefits St. Jude and Cancer Research. There are a few hundred people that attend this farm every year, and that's one of their big money makers, money makers for the St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. So they could also have limited options for manure management. One, they may not have an adequate storage area. They may not have the equipment needed to deal with their manure, or they may not have big enough fields for spreading, or they may not have sufficient quantities to make use of an outside compost facility. So you can see that's a harrow right there where we drag the fields. We do use these to help drag the manure to help increase nitrogen content over the fields. This can be a huge problem on operations dealing with horse manure. A lot of horse owners also participate in shows and other events. So a challenge could be limiting travel and exposure to other animals or horses. So it's not always possible to limit that exposure. It also, if you are in the horse business, to have a successful operation as a income profit, That may also depend on promoting your animals through either the performance of the animals or the clientele in a competition or activities off of a farm. The picture here is my niece showing, we do show spotted saddle horses. So this was us at a gated show. Some operations may not be able to keep a closed herd. Um, a lot of times horse temperament, horses will have to be, or you may want to kind of separate them from the rest of the herd, but sometimes you can't. The gender, the age, or even owner preference. And sometimes the size of the farm often dictates where horses are grouped. Most farms do not have adequate quarantine space for either recently purchased, sick, or traveling animals. Those traveling animals may be the animals that go out to shows and other events. So that's another challenge that horse owners can face. So those are some of the challenges that we as horse owners face. So now we can talk about prevention. What are some ways that we can reduce the risk of spreading any infectious diseases? A lot of them are pretty basic, everyday hygiene practices that we can do. And also, maintain routine care to our facilities. So we're going to talk about three in particular: our prevention of infectious disease outbreaks, improving environmental factors, and also how the prevention can improve the overall animal's health and well-being. So by, having good biosecurity practices, we can prevent the spread of infectious disease outbreaks. So prevention of just, one event or one outbreak could possibly save hundreds or even thousands of dollars in vet cost. We know that traveling to go get vet care or a vet coming on our farm, it can add up to a lot of money. So the three most common methods of disease transmission in the barn or on the farm, the top most common method is horse-to-horse interaction. The second is human traffic. They're either in the barn or on the farm. And then also wildlife or pest getting into the barn area. And what I mean by wildlife and pest, you could have, I'll get into this later about, standing water that can be, or inhibit mosquitoes on the farm. Also, you may have a mice infestation. So just routine proper care of our barn and facilities can help limit wildlife and pests becoming a problem. Of course, you'll probably always have, mice or rodents or birds building a nest. So we can't eliminate those methods 100%, but we can try any way possible to try to limit those exposures. As you can see, the horse on the right is severely malnourished. The picture here is of a tapeworm. I know it doesn't look like a worm, but that is one of the stages of a tapeworm. And that horse right there is also suffering from tapeworm issues. And as we know, kind of worms and parasites, the way that they're transmitted from horse to horse is that horse ingests one of the parasites from grazing or from it being, on a surface that they come in contact with. It gets into their intestine, into their bloodstream, inside of them. And then whenever they defecate, it returns back to, the ground where they either feed in a trough, feed in a bucket, or graze in a pasture. So we can try to, limit the disease spread this way. So another way that we can help to, prevent infectious disease, either an outbreak or spread, is improve environmental issues with water and soil quality. So nutrient management is critical. The picture to the right is an issue with runoff. So be proactive whenever you're dealing with any runoff issues. Of course, in the picture on the right, with the nutrients, you have an increased, nutrient load in that area. And then also, like I said, any kind of standing water just increases the rate of any kind of pest that may come onto the farm. So talking about, nutrient management, I thought I would throw in some of the rates. So a horse can produce, anywhere up to 31 pounds of manure and up to 20 pounds of urine per day. Their bedding can, create 8 to 15 pounds of waste a day. So what this kind of equates to is 12 tons per year per horse of waste. That's a lot of waste that a horse owner may have to deal with. So anything that we can do to try to, lessen that nutrient load onto our farm will help reduce the spread of infectious disease. So by doing some of these preventative measures, it will overall, improve your animal's health and well-being. The more strict your biosecurity protocols are, the more you're going to reduce the possibility of animal loss due to death, or even it can help decrease the recovery time from illness. That was a favorite horse on our farm. That's Charlie. We did lose him to colic a few years ago, but we always, tried to increase biosecurity measures because he was over 30 years old. So we tried to, increase biosecurity protocols to help increase, the age that he was. So biosecurity on your farm. So what can you do starting at the home to try to, increase biosecurity? You should definitely designate a pair of boots to wear only on your farm. Then also designate a pair of boots to wear whenever you make farm visits. So myself being an ag extension agent, excuse me, I go on many, many farm calls. One thing that I do is I keep a spare pair of boots in the back end of my truck. And then I also keep a can of disinfectant there in under the back seat. So one thing I do is whenever I come onto a producer's farm, I will immediately change my footwear and disinfect before I, walk onto their farm. And then also, whenever I take the boots off, they get disinfected before they get thrown back into the back of my truck. And then I've got boots that I only wear on my farm. just because I don't want anything brought off the farm onto the farm. Of course, we can always change our clothes after handling your animals and after, working with animals off the farm or off the property. We'll go into that more, especially when dealing with quarantined, isolated, new, sick animals. I've already kind of talked about this, but try to eliminate any standing water areas because they're a potential source of disease. Keep all of your water tubs and buckets clean or as clean as possible. Separate horses whenever you're feeding and assign individual feed buckets or pans. You can also assign each horse their own tack, their own lead rope, their own grooming equipment. Or if you do not have, enough equipment to designate for each horse, you can always disinfect, in between each animal. You also want to disinfect your equipment and vehicles prior to entering the barn and pasture areas if they've been off-site or used around sick animals. Always consult your vet to help, develop a vaccination protocol for your horses. So one easy, very economical way that we can disinfect our equipment is if you buy, the diluted household bleach solutions. The rate recommended is 1/3 cup of bleach per gallon of water. I have, one of these gallons of bleach sprayers mixed up at home at all times. And one thing that I do to kind of keep, the sprayers separate is always write on that sprayer with a Sharpie what the contents are. And something else you may want to do, you may want to write what the concentration or what the mixture is inside or what the rate of application is. Especially when you're spraying other things, it's kind of hard to read, the fine print. A lot of times labels get ripped off jugs. So it's just easier to label your sprayer with a Sharpie. So biosecurity at shows or other events, of course, we always only want to use our own equipment. You do want to avoid sharing any kind of forks, any kind of wheelbarrow, any kind of tack. Always avoid sharing those type pieces of equipment. Of course, if you are away from the farm, if you're off of your property, you only want to feed and water your horses with your own buckets, tubs, and feeders. It is not recommended to use a shared water tub. If you are having to stable your animals, maybe you're gone to a week-long trail ride and you are renting stables. It may be to where you can, purchase an extra, empty stall so that you have an empty stall between your horses and anybody else's horses. That is not always possible, but if you can, that is a pretty good recommendation. Of course, you do want to disinfect and clean all items that may have come into contact with other horses or other people. When coming home, of course, again, disinfect all equipment and vehicles to prevent any unintentional pathogens that may come onto your farm. Again, I'll say this quite a bit, but talk to your vet about vaccination protocols, especially for these horses that are off the farm quite a bit. You do want to limit, your horse's exposure risk, and you and your vet can develop a plan, specifically for those horses that travel quite a bit, that are off the farm and then back onto your farm. So biosecurity for visitors to your farm. Visitors can unknowingly, bring diseases and pathogens onto your farm. You can provide the plastic booties for visitors to wear. Some farms buy cheap rubber boots and have an array of sizes that they keep on there, or keep on hand. Maybe they don't want to use those disposable plastic booties, so whenever a visitor comes on, you can slip on a pair of theirs. Also, they do have these disinfecting mats or a foot bath that visitors can enter or can walk through whenever they enter and exit your farm. I put a picture of Lilybeth, their Brownie, and I know it's a cute picture of a cute girl, but one thing there is, anytime I saddle a Brownie for her to wear, before she comes onto the farm, she puts her muck boots on. And one reason why she rides with the muck boots is so that she can walk through a footpath. So that's one of the reasons why I put that picture there. Of course, you also do want to provide hand sanitizer or a hand washing area so that visitors can wash or sanitize their hands whenever they come onto the farm and also whenever they exit. You also want to keep visitors from driving into your pastures or barn areas. If using a visitor's equipment, make sure that it's disinfected prior to and after the use. So what I mean by those last two kind of items there, I'll just throw out having the vet come to your farm, and I'll use myself as an example. So my vet and I, we have, an extremely good working relationship. Whenever I call him, usually it's because there's a sick animal. And usually I've got a male and a female vet, but whichever comes onto the farm, usually they have also been to a farm with a sick animal. So my vet knows that whenever I call them, they have this designated area on the farm that they know to park their truck. So what I'll do is I'll hop on the side by side or hop in my truck. I'll go pick the vet up. They will gather any supplies that they think they'll need for whatever's going on with the animal. And I will drive them to the barn or out into the pasture. I've developed that great working relationship, with my vet. They know that I know that they visit a lot of, farms with sick animals. And I do not want whatever that previous farmer had on their farm exposed to my animals. Whenever I first brought this up, oh gosh, many, many years ago, to, my vets, they were appreciative of me, looking out for myself and my animals. So that's kind of what I mean by, keep your visitors from driving in your pasture or your barn areas. If you're using their equipment, just make sure they're disinfected before they're used on your animals, and then also after. So biosecurity for new horses, a lot of this is the same as what we're going to talk about with, sick horses. But anytime you acquire a new horse, make sure that they're isolated or quarantined for 2 to 6 weeks. Make sure that the isolation or quarantine area, it should disallow for any physical contact between any other horses at your farm. Also, make sure that it either limits or eliminates the passing of saliva and nasal discharge. And that's just because, many diseases, many pathogens are spread through those mucous membranes. Of course, if we've acquired one new horse, we've probably got others on our farm. So anytime that you're having to, feed, water, whatever, all of your horses, make sure that you handle all of your other horses first and then move to the new horses afterwards. You're probably tired of me hearing this, but always disinfect, walk through a foot bath before entering and exiting that quarantine area. Also, launder or wash your clothes after, attending to those isolated quarantine animals. Also, for that isolation area, you'll want to designate, any kind of feed or water pans or buckets, a lead rope, a halter. Make sure you designate, equipment just for those new horses. Of course, you will want to require a current negative Coggins test and vaccination record. And I usually require this before that animal even steps foot on the farm. So if I, go pick up that horse, that animal, I require it upon, purchase. Again, work with your vet, to come out and evaluate that new animal. Have them look over that new animal's, vaccination record. What they were deworming with may not be what you're deworming with, and just work with your vet, to kind of get those new horses aligned with what the horses already on your farm have. The last one just says, make sure you follow up on it. Don't just have your vet come out and look at the vaccination record and deworming protocol, but actually give those vaccines, actually give those dewormers. And you especially want to do this before commingling those new horses with the ones already on your farm. So next, we have biosecurity for sick horses. Animals get sick. It's inevitable. So of course, work with your vet to develop an appropriate treatment and quarantine protocol. Having a good working relationship is very imperative if you're going to have any type of animal on your farm. Just like with newly acquired animals, you do want to separate the sick horse from the rest of the herd. Make sure that whenever you're, doing all of your other chores, do the chores and tend to those healthy horses before you tend to the sick horse. Thoroughly and carefully wash your hands both before and after treatment. Sometimes, we may need to take a full shower after taking care of that sick horse. Again, walk through a disinfecting foot bath before entering and exiting the treatment area. You don't want to bring any pathogens, that another horse may have to that already sick animal. And then you also don't want to spread whatever the sick animal has out to the rest of the herd. Don't mix your sick horses or your sick horse laundry with other clothing. Wash immediately. Now they do have laundry detergent that has a disinfectant kind of built into it. I use that quite a bit, just because I'm out with animals and everything else all the time. And of course, usually when we're dealing with sick animals, you do have soiled clothing. So make sure you can wash those clothes as soon as you can. So any tools and equipment used around that sick animal, of course, clean and disinfect prior to any other use. I also recommend disinfecting and cleaning in between each use on that sick animal. You don't want to maybe contribute to the longevity of the issue. It may also be useful to put, an old washer and dryer, out in the barn area. You may have a separate tack area where you wash your horses in the barn. Keep just a sink out there, the bare minimum, sink, disinfectant, soap, washer, dryer out there as well. And you can see that there's a shelf there with equipment that can be disinfected as well. So we have two websites that I always like to recommend to people. The first one is uthorse.com. I hope you can see where I'm sharing the uthorse.com. But here is where you can go to get a lot more information, especially with, COVID-19 pandemic happening right now. Dr. Ivy, who is our state horse specialist, she has listed some great resources here for dealing with horses during the pandemic. So here, if you are one of those facilities, that employs people or has visitors for an operation, here's, what you should do for that, for visitors. So social distancing and, safety, there are recommendations. But one thing that I really want to share is the resources page right here. So today's topic was biosecurity, but a lot of people have questions about, vaccine protocols or what illness my horse may have. I know I only skimmed the surface about manure management. There's pastures for horses, general health questions. So this website right here gives a wealth of knowledge for horse owners. One of the links that I go to quite a bit is the first aid and safety. Here's another one, the diseases and vaccines. So I'll just use this as an example. Equine diseases and vaccines. That wasn't today's topic, but if you do have questions about those topics, you can go here, like right here. It shows adult horse and broodmare, a vaccination schedule. You should, you can print this out and maybe take it on a visit, to the vet and talk about this protocol, with your vet. So anytime you have, any kind of specific questions, go to uthorse.com. The other website that I want to share is Extension Horses, or it's horses.extension.org. This is not a UT specific website. This is made up of extension cohorts from around the nation. So if you have any kind of questions, maybe you looked onto uthorse.com and you didn't find the resource that you were looking for, go to Extension Horses. It is very timely. They've developed several infographics for the COVID-19 pandemic that we're going through. If you'll also see on the right here, there's all of the categories that you can go in to look for. Maybe you needed to look up more information on the federal PPP program. They've got it linked right here. So those are two resources that are very valuable. They're valuable to horse owners and to extension agents as well. So with that, that's all that I have today about, biosecurity specific. Do you guys have any questions?
I didn't see any in the chat, Amanda.
Okay. My contact information is over here on the right. If you have any questions, or if you think of any questions later, or if you would like a copy of the PowerPoint presentation, feel free to send me an email to the email address listed there, and I will be glad to send it out.